Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder and this is BRN Weekly for Saturday, July 25th, 2020. And our top story today, fully funded pensions. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Professor Jonathan Foreman of the University of Oklahoma College of Law. Professor Foreman, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to see you. I almost feel like it's deja vu. Let's jump right in. You recently wrote a academic paper about fully funded pensions for the Marquette Law Review. Why don't you take us through a little bit about what the paper was about? I think the audience will find it fascinating.
Sure. Well, for years now, I've been concerned about the adequacy of funding of pensions for people. People need to have fully funded pensions in order to be able to retire and have an adequate income throughout their long retirements. In particular, the corporate sector, corporate funds are 80% funded, and corporate defined contribution plans just don't contribute enough to guarantee that everybody will have an adequate retirement income. Mm-hmm. Local pensions are even lower funded. They owe about $8.7 trillion, and they've only got $4 trillion on hand. So they're about 45% funded, according to the Federal Reserve Board's estimate. Some of the private sector estimates suggest maybe they're 72% funded, but still they're terribly underfunded. And most people who are saving in IRAs or 401k plans simply aren't saving enough. So as I said, the goal of retirement savings and the retirement system is to make sure that people have adequate retirement income. That means we need to take a few steps. The first is to determine a target level of income in retirement. Second is to design Social Security and pension systems that will achieve those adequate funding benefits. And then finally, we have to fully fund those systems, which means we have to make the contributions. Right now, Social Security is underfunded. It's a pay-as-you-go system. So it collects about $1 trillion in payroll taxes every year, and it pays out about $1 trillion in benefits every year. But it only has $2 or $3 trillion on hand, 2 or 3 years worth of benefits on hand. And as the baby boomers reach retirement, that money will disappear. As I said, private pensions are underfunded. So what's the goal? The first thing is to figure out a target. And most analysts, financial analysts, suggest you probably want to save 70 to 80%, replace 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement earnings. Social Security for the typical worker will replace around 35% of pre-retirement earnings, more for low-income workers and less for high-income workers. But that means we probably ought to save about 40% in private pension system or IRAs or 401k plan in order to have enough to retire on and have, say, 75% of our pre-retirement earnings throughout our long retirement. Typical male will live 19 years from 65 to 84, and typical female will live to be probably 86, so around 21 years. And a married couple, one of you will probably live to be around 90, and a good number, 10%, one of you will make it to 100. So you have to save for a long time. What I did in my paper was to develop a model pension system, a model defined benefit plan, a traditional pension, if you will, and also a model 401k plan. And I asked the question, how much needs to be set aside every year for somebody to save enough to retire on? I hypothesized a typical worker who would start with a salary of around $25,000 a year, and over a 40-year period from age 25 to age 65 would want to save enough money to be able to retire and get 40% replacement from his or her private pension. That take, well, in a defined benefit plan, we'd be thinking about working for 40 years and earning 1% times final average pay in each of those 40 years, or 40% of final average pay. The final pay would end up being about $100,000 a year, with normal wage increases from age 25 at $25,000 to age 65 or 64, and final salary of about $100,000. So we would be getting $40,000 a year from our traditional pension, if we had enough saved. How much do you need to save? Your employer probably needs to set aside enough so that there's about $400,000 there in order to get $40,000 a year in a lifetime annuity starting at age 65. And the same would be true for a defined contribution plan. How would you get there as an individual trying to save? If you wanted to have $40,000 a year at age 65 to retire on, and with a normal life expectancy of around 20 years, you'd need to have 400,000. You'd need to save around 7% of your salary every year that you worked from age 25 to age 64, retiring right at age 65. Now, if you work longer, you might be able to save a little less. If you don't actually have 40 years in which you're saving for retirement because your employer didn't have a plan or you didn't save, then you'd need to save a little bit more each year. And also, since you're going to be living in retirement, you're going to face the risk of inflation. So probably you really need to save more like 9% of your salary every year from age 25 to age 64 in order to have a pension at retirement that would pay you $40,000 a year in retirement, or 40% of your final average pay. So
yeah, John, I mean, these are, I don't know if these numbers are shocking, because I don't think it's shocking. I think we all know that people are living longer. I think one, I want to get your opinion on this. I mean, public pension plans and Social Security were set up with certain assumptions. Pension plans, I should say, were set up with certain assumptions. Would it be your estimation that maybe some of these assumptions need to be revisited specifically for mortality? And how do you communicate this beyond what we're already doing? Because it sounds like, we got to get people to save more. We're in the middle of a COVID pandemic, clearly, where finances are tight for so many Americans, so many are unemployed. But just want to get your thoughts on those two questions.
Well, first on life expectancies are increasing, and on average, we'll live 4 years longer than our parents lived, and maybe longer than that. Maybe we'll cure cancer. Maybe we've done a lot with heart disease, and I don't think COVID's going to be a big factor in this, although I'm sorry to see some people dying in this circumstance and some being sick and maybe prone to other illness. So people are going to live longer than they expect. People typically underestimate their life expectancy and they retire too soon. An awful lot of people take Social Security at age 62, the first age at which you're eligible to get it. And that's foolish. The best plan is to probably delay taking Social Security till you're 70, because it's a really good investment. If you leave your money with Social Security, your benefits go up about 8% a year from age 62 to age 70. So you get a much bigger benefit at 70 if you can delay taking Social Security benefits. Now, you might stop working at 62 or 67, but if you can delay taking your benefits, it's a really good investment compared to the 1 or 2% you can get on bonds these days. And then, I'm sorry, your second question was?
My second question, I think, was just more around how do you communicate this to people because of the difficulty that people are having just right now with meeting their own financial needs, their personal needs, their shelter needs.
Sure. The one good thing about the coronavirus pandemic is that people are probably spending a little bit less on junk. So that's probably a good thing, because when we come out of it, people may realize that they actually can afford to save more. And that's a good idea to have a lot of savings, both emergency savings and retirement savings. I'm a little concerned about many employers cutting their matches on 401k plans or cutting out their pensions altogether. And I'm hoping that when the economy recovers, those employers will increase their contributions. As for individuals, I think we should probably think about an automatic enrollment system to IRA, where virtually every worker in the economy, whether covered by an employer plan or not, would be contributing to a 401k plan or an IRA, unless they opt out of that. So an automatic enrollment system that covers more workers, particularly low and middle income workers, aren't typically covered by their employer pension plans. Small employers don't have plans. ERISA never required every employer to have a plan, and it gave an awful lot of freedom to employers that do have plans, so that and allows them to effectively underfund the amount that people will need in retirement. So we could toughen up ERISA So that would help cover more employees in the private sector. And the federal government or the states need to do much more for their state employees. Now, I am heartened by states like Oregon that have an automatic enrollment system for IRAs for workers in their state in the private sector who are not covered by employer plans. Their employers have to adopt these auto IRA plans through the state. It doesn't cost the employer anything, but they have to automatically enroll their employees in a retirement savings plan. And that'll be a good thing. But as I say, people need to save more for retirement, and they need to have emergency savings. And the only silver lining in the coronavirus cloud is that maybe people appreciate now that they need to have a little bit more savings.
Yeah, there is a silver lining there, I think. John, very interesting, very important paper. I hope people in Washington and at state legislatures are certainly paying attention, reading the paper, and discussing these very important topics, because it's right here on our front door. Always a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective, and look forward to having you back on the program very soon.
Thank you, Jeff. Stay safe.
Thanks, John, for sharing your perspective. And when we come back, we'll take a look at some of the best segments for the week. So stay tuned right here on BRN Weekly. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America and install them in as little as 1 day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive FIBREX composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. Earlier this week, I spoke with the Employee Retirement System of Georgia's Jim Potvin to discuss how he and his team persevered while managing through the pandemic. Let's take a look.
You know, I really can't say enough about how our employees have reacted to all of this. They've been totally professional. We're able to do virtually everything that we could do in the office from home. We were a little bit fortunate. Just about everybody did at least a little bit of teleworking before we got started. So we had a really solid infrastructure in place. But still, it's tough to go from, mostly being in the office to being physically isolated from each other. But they've really stepped up. doing a great job of communicating with each other and, of course, keeping up with everything going on with our members. So couldn't be happier right now with how they've performed. Yeah, whatever the member is most comfortable with. It's probably mostly telephone and a little bit of video conference. But yeah, whatever is available. Skype, Zoom, WebEx are all your friend. Yeah, I mean, we had an order early on from the governor saying that to the extent that we would be able to work from home, we should do that. In some cases, take driver services, for example, where you have to be face-to-face with the public. They were actually, severely curtailed in terms of their hours and their ability to connect with the public for a while. Lately, we've been trying to bring some of those functions of state government back online. Mm-hmm. Again, very fortunate that I'm not personally having to deal with that in my agency, but a lot of those other agencies are, and they're going through the protocols and trying to set things up for the safety of their employees and the public. We know it's been interesting, actually. So we run the call center for the pension side, internally. So we have direct access to all those statistics. And our call volume has dropped by about 25 to 30% since the pandemic started, at least since our teleworking has started back in March. So either that means that people have something else on their minds, or they're just not as concerned about what we're doing for them as they are maybe about other aspects of their lives. I will also say that state turnover among the employee population is declining. The number of new retirees per month is declining a little bit. So there just seems to be an overall slowdown as people are trying to just kind of ride out, I think, what's going on right now. But the most common inquiries are what you would expect them to be in normal times. There's not a lot of, fear related to their pension benefit per se. And, that's very gratifying. We've worked very hard to be one less thing for our folks to worry about. And it appears to be holding steady right now. Yeah, so you get a little bit more concern on that side since people have more direct access and responsibility for their investments. We've seen a little bit of a shift in the makeup of our member investment accounts toward what they consider to be safer options, a little bit more toward the money market and toward our target maturity bond funds. So there's been a little bit of that. We also implemented the coronavirus distribution as part of recent federal legislation. And we've had something like 12 or 1,300 people out of 36,000 or so take a distribution, about $5 million out of the plan in total. And for us, it was a little bit of a concern because we don't have loan provisions in our plan. So we were wondering if we would get a real flood of those distributions. And it's really not been. The average distribution is only a few $1,000s. It doesn't seem to be any real panic, just people trying to prudently plan and react to the circumstances they're facing. For sure. We're not over promoting it.
Sure.
I would say it's not like we implemented the new distribution rules that everybody come get your money or anything like that. But we wanted to be clear that it was available and make it as simple as possible for those who were truly in need about that. Truly, our membership has been very steady as you go, though, since this all began. Our participation rate is holding steady at about 92%. Our average contribution rate is pretty much rock solid at about 5%. Almost across the board, our metrics are pretty much holding stable over the past 6 months. So, so far, so good as far as, the reaction of our membership.
And on Thursday, I sat down with Forbes' Jason Bisnoff to discuss the impact of financial advisors taking PPP loans. Let's take a look.
Yeah, so basically the way we looked at it was we have a partnership with RIA Channel, and they put out the 100 largest RIAs by AUM. And we looked at those 100 as just a baseline out of curiosity. We found around 30. The number danced between low 30s, upper 20s once we had checked against the ADVs. But that number had taken PPP loans, and they were all billion-dollar firms. And then out of the top 10, I believe 4 took PPP loans. Well, the people I interviewed, just to give maybe a little preview, is that there was a big trend of returning the money. I know everybody remembers Harvard and the Lakers being the two big institutions that returned, and several of the people I interviewed mentioned that that was kind of a coming to Jesus moment, if you will, about the fact that this is really meant for pizza places, at least in their eyes. I mean, obviously, I don't work for the SBA. I have no intention of saying who it was meant for, but several of the RIAs have already returned it, and I would expect maybe a little bit more of a wave of that being a trend now that the SBA publicized it, which it's notable was not clear when this program was started that the SBA would put out a release like this. So it is kind of something that people who took the loan weren't aware when taking that it was going to be a thing where there's going to be a giant spreadsheet sent publicly. Well, I think financial services definitely still has a black eye from 2008. And I think that is something that one of my sources actually mentioned that he was relating some of the things he was hearing to the TARP payouts after 2008, which he said a lot of people don't know, and this was his opinion, not mine, were paid back in full. And so I think something to watch going forward, and this was the person who, if you read the article, was off the record, was that he mentioned that he thinks the real story will be checking months down the road who applies for the forgiveness provision. Because to take a 1% loan from the taxpayers is one thing, to then say, I want forgiveness is another. So he thinks that is the real story. And he had said, which obviously, taking his word for it for the time being, while it is still up in limbo, he had said he had never had any intention. It was seen as a quick way to capital raise when the market was really scary in late March. But he said that his intention was to return it to taxpayers. So that'll be something I think to watch going forward. Yes, and that was how we initially started doing our digging. And to be honest, that was kind of this very inexact science because of when people fill out their Form ADV during the year and what kind of leeway they had, because eventually it has to appear on there. But I don't think the SBA had the bandwidth, or the SEC for that matter, to check. If you looked at the Excel spreadsheets, check every financial services firm to say that they got it in immediately. So the SBA release was kind of made our jobs a lot easier. But ADVs where we originally started to do the digging, and it should appear on, I would assume, all ADVs. I don't run an RIA firm, and they're filled out a Form ADV. I would assume by the end of the year they would all have it, or they'd probably be in violation of some regulation around the ADV, including things that could affect their business, which if you're taking PPP loan, you are saying your business has been affected. Well, and that was one of the things that in the story, there are several people who are quite passionate critics of the people who took the loans. And one thing they had mentioned is that in the voice of Dan Wiener, who I spoke with, he said that for him, he's an advisor, and he said, I advise to be ready for a rainy day to my clients. So what does it say if I'm not ready for a rainy day? That, along with another advisor I spoke with, who said that he debated taking a loan, but then the attestation that you have to do on the loan to say that your business is deeply imperiled, I don't know the exact wording, but it gets to around that tone. He said it just would have been lying for him if he would have said. He was not sitting there wondering if he had to close up shop. And so he was questioning whether all those RIA firms took that attestation as seriously as he did. Their words, not mine, but they were pretty bold with their criticism.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. We're back again tomorrow for the BRN Sunday podcast, where I'll be joined by members of academia, financial services, and the media as we analyze all the news this week in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and more. You're not going to want to miss it. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Attention! The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has officially authorized new benefits that Medicare Advantage plans may include. To get the benefits you deserve, you can call the Medicare Coverage Helpline.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. If you're on Medicare, this is important information. I called the Medicare Coverage Helpline and they instantly looked up my coverage. In this one simple call, they offered to enroll me in a plan that includes rides to medical appointments, private home aides, doctors and nurses' visits by telephone, and even home-delivered meals. The plan also includes dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage, all at no additional cost.
Don't delay. Call to see if the new benefits are available in your area.
Call the number on your screen now. It's free.
Call 1-800-757-1451. That's 1-800-757-1451.